Tania Maria Barrientos, se habla español. Tania Maria Barrientos is Director of Executive Communications for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, a former columnist and feature writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the author of 2 novels. The following essay appeared in Latina, a bilingual magazine published by and for Latinas. It was adopted from an essay of the same title that was published in the Borderline Personalities, a new generation Latinas dish on sex, sass, and cultural shifting. In this piece, Barrientos recounts her struggles as a Latina who is not fluent in Spanish. She takes her title from the phrase often seen in the store windows announcing that Spanish is spoken here. The man on the other end of the phone is telling me the classes I've called about are first-rate narrative speakers in charge, no more than 6 students per group. I tell him that will be fine, and yes, I have studied a bit of Spanish in the past. He asked for my name and I supplied it, rolling the double R in Barrientos like a pro. That's when I hear the silent snag, the monetary hesitation I've come to expect at this part of the exchange. Should I go into it again? Should I explain, the way I have done a half a dozen other times, that I am Guatemalan by birth, but pura gringa by circumstance? This will be the 6th time I've signed up to learn the language my parents speak to each other. It will be the 6th time I've brought books and notebooks and textbooks listing 501 conjugated verbs in alphabetical order in hopes that the subjunction tense will finally take root in my mind. In class, I will sit across the table from a native speaker who will wonder what to make of me. Look, I'll want to say but never do. Forget the dark skin. Ignore the obsidian eyes. Pretend I'm pink-cheeked, blue-eyed blonde whose name tag says Shannon. Because this is what a person who doesn't innately know the difference between Cora, or Gori is supposed to look like, isn't it? I came to the United States in 1963 at age 3 with my family and immediately stopped speaking Spanish. College educated and seamlessly bilingual when they settled in West Texas. My parents, a psychology professor and an artist, wholeheartedly embraced the notion of American melting pot. They declared that their 2 children would speak nothing but English. They read in English, write in English, and fit into an Anglo society beautifully. It sounds politically incorrect, but America was not a hyphenated nation back then. People who called themselves Mexican Americans or African Americans were considered dangerous racials, while law-abiding citizens were expected to drop their culture baggage at the border and erase any lingering ethnic traits. To be honest, for most of my childhood, I'd like to begin the brown girl who defied expectations. When I was 7, my mother returned my older brother to me to elementary school 1 week after the school year had already begun. We've been on vacation in Washington, D.C., visiting the Smithsonian, the capital, and the home of Edgar Allan Poe. The Volkswagen on the way home, I memorized The Raven. I would recite it melodramatic flair to any poor soul duped into sitting through my performance. At the school's office, the registrar frowned when we arrived. You people, you children are already behind, and you have the nerve to bring him in late. But children, my mother answered, is clear. Curt tone will be the top of the class in 2 weeks. The registrar filed our cards, shaking her head. I did not live in a neighborhood with other Latinos. and the public school I attended attracted very few. I saw the word through the I saw the world through the clear, cruel vision of a child. To me, speaking Spanish translated into being poor. It meant waiting on tables and cleaning hotel rooms. It meant being left off the cheerleading squad, and receiving a condescending smile from the guidance counselor when you said you plan on becoming a lawyer or a doctor. My best friends' names were Heidi and Leslie and Kim. They told me I didn't seem Mexican to them, and I took it as a compliment. I enjoyed looking into the faces of Latino store clerks and waitresses, and yes, even our maid, and saying, No hablo español. Yo no hablo español. It made me feel superior. I made, it made me feel American. It made me feel white. I thought if I stayed away from Spanish, stereotypes would stay away from me. Then came the backlash. Then came the backlash. During the 2 decades when I worked hard to isolate myself from the stereotype, I concentrated on my own head. Society shifted. The nation changed its view on ethnic identity. College professors started teaching history from African Americans and Native American eyes. Children were told to forget about the melting pot and picture America as a multicolored quilt instead. Hyphen suddenly had a muscle, and I was left wondering where I fit in. The Spanish language was supposedly the glue that held the new Latino community together, but in the case it was what kept me apart. I felt awkward among groups whose conversation flowed in and out of Spanish. I'd, I'd be asked questions in Spanish, and if I had to answer in English, knowing this raised a mountain of questions. I wanted to call myself Latina to finally take pride, but it felt like a lie. So I set out to learn the language that people assume I already knew. After my first set of lessons, I could function in a present tense. Hola, Paco, ¿qué tal? ¿Qué color es tu guardado? El mío es azul. My vocabulary built quickly, but when I spoke, my tongue felt like inside my mouth, felt thick inside my mouth. And if I needed to deal with anything in the future or the past, I was sunk. I enrolled in 3 months of submersion program in Mexico and emerged able to speak like a sixth grade with a solid C average. I could read Gabriel Garcia Marquez with a Spanish-English dictionary and at my elbow, and I could follow 90% of the melodrama of the given telenovelas. But true speakers discuss my limitations in the moment I stumbled over a difficult construction. And that's when I got the look. The one that raises the wall between us. The one that makes me think I'll really never belong. Spanish has become a litmus test showing how far your roots you've strayed. My bilingual friends say I make too much of it. They tell me that my Guatemalan heritage is unmistakable. Beyond features are even legitimized in my memberships in the Latin American Club. After all, not all Poles speak Polish. Not all Italians speak Italian. And if the nation grows more and more Hispanics, not all Latinos will share one language. But I don't believe them. There must be other Latinas like me, but I haven't met any, or should I say, I haven't met any who have fessed up. Maybe they are the secretly struggling to fit in the same way I am. Maybe they're hiring tutors and listening to tapes behind locked doors, just like me. I wish we all had the courage to come out of our hiding places and claim our rightful spot in the broad Latino spectrum without being called hopeless gringas, without without having to offer apologies or show remorse. If if it will help, I will go first. Aquí estoy. Spanish challenge and pura Latina.